Isn't that cool? Welcome to this epic battle of the inexpensive telephoto lenses that are mostly for Canon. I really gotta work in that title. If you watched last week's video, you probably know that I had a mystery lens and I was out looking for birds. All right, the lens is not really a mystery. It was a Sigma 60-600 Sport, but it was covered with one of these cheap Amazon plastic baggies because it was a rental and I didn't want to damage it. And I was out in the snow and the rain, so I have one of these on. These little rain covers will really help protect your investment. Now, besides the Sigma 60-600 Sport, I also rented a Canon RF 600mm, an RF 800mm, and the 1-500L lens for Canon. Now the Sigma, they have different mounts. These other lenses are for Canon only and only for mirrorless Canon. But stay tuned because the results were pretty interesting. All right, this is a random thought, but have you ever seen a duck land on water? It's hilarious. It's like a controlled crash. It's awesome. All right, now back to the lenses. You'll notice that all these lenses are of a certain price range. $800 600mm to the most expensive 1-500, that's almost $3,000. And that's because that's kind of like in my budget. And if I'm ever interested in buying a telephoto lens, I want to test them out first and see which one I like best. I did not rent the $18,000 RF lens or the $12,000 RF lens because, quite frankly, I can't buy those. So that's why I chose the battle of the inexpensive telephoto lenses, because I want to compare all these four and see how they do. Let's start with the 600mm f11. This lens you could buy used right now for 450 bucks. It sounds awesome, but the drawback is the f11. It's lightweight. I don't believe it's weather sealed. I don't remember, but it's just f11. You need a lot of light, or you're gonna have crazy ISOs, especially if you're shooting something like kids sports, indoors, or if you're trying to shoot wildlife where you need fast shutter speeds. Your ISO is gonna be way too high, which makes this lens no for me. Even though I managed to get some good images, and I found it better than the 800mm. Now the 800mm, awesome lens, same thing, it's lightweight. It doesn't quite fit in the backpack. It's much larger than the 600, but it has the same drawback. It's an f11. Again, the light thing. And I found that the image stabilizer, when you're hand holding, trying to track a bird, it doesn't work as well. I felt like I was all over the place. And being that it's an 800mm, you're gonna need a little bit faster shutter speed to avoid any motion blur when you're hand holding. So great lens. I did get a couple of good images, but ideal conditions are a must. Otherwise, the noise, f11, I don't like it. Even though the Canon R5, the mirrorless camera, handles great noise, great high ISOs, it's just way too much for some of these images. Now, I did manage to get a couple of good photos with both of these lenses, the RF f11s, which are made specifically for Canon for the mirrorless system, but both of them have the same drawbacks, the f11 and the limited focus range. Most modern mirrorless cameras, you can focus on the whole screen basically. Your whole screen is your focus points. When you put one of these lenses on, it reduces it to about that much, the middle of your screen. So when your subject goes out of this box, you can't track it anymore, which is really hard when you got an 800mm and you're trying to zoom in onto the center and keep your subject in the center. With these two lenses, I found that the best technique is spray and pray. It's awesome. This technique is when you put your camera on high-speed continuous shooting and you just hold the button down and take as many photos as you can and hope that you got a good one, or you pray that you got a good one. And it does work. This is a good technique to use, especially when you're shooting wildlife or anything that's fast and moving. Sports, the same way. Now let's talk about the Sigma 60-600mm f6.3 Sport. beast mode lens. This thing was awesome. It's very heavy though. Sigma makes these lenses for multiple mounts. I rented the one for the Canon EF mount, which is their non-mirrorless, is a DSLR, but I have an adapter, so I used it both on my Canon 5D Mark IV and the Canon R5. With both cameras, I got great shots, but this lens is very heavy. It is a beast. Having the 6.3 is awesome because you can get the same images at the same shutter speeds with half the ISO as you can with the F11s. So the 6.3 aperture is great, but again, this lens is very heavy, especially when you attach a camera and when you're hand holding, after carrying it all day long, you feel it. Did I mention how heavy this lens is? And last but not least, we have the Canon 100 to 500 f7.1. It's a variable aperture lens. A 100 millimeter starts at f4. When you zoom out to 500, it becomes an f7.1. It's the only L glass here. It's the only Canon Pro lens. It's a white lens with the red ring. That means it's a Pro lens. It's a great quality lens, but it doesn't have the same reach. It's only a 500 millimeter. But it's still a very good lens to have. I already have the 400 millimeter. Having that extra, I'm sliding in the snow here. Having that extra 100 was great. It's a great lens, not as heavy as a Sigma, but that extra stop in the aperture, I don't know, the 6.3 was nice. 7.1 is way better than the other F11s, but it's still just not quite there. Again, I did manage to get some very good images with this lens, but the price, it's almost $1,000 more than the Sigma. Oh, it kind of makes you think a little bit, but it's not as heavy. Did I mention how heavy the Sigma is? Now, hands down, the star of the show was Lightroom Denoise. I don't know what I would have done if I didn't have Lightroom Denoise. None of these photos would have been good. Years ago, shooting at ISO 6400 and trying to get a clear image was impossible. But today we have the technology. Use it to your benefit. It helps a lot. And to be able to get this quality images at those high ISOs, mind-blowing, literally. Now remember, noise is most present in dark conditions. Some of these images that were bright out at 6400 ISO with bright light, you don't even notice the noise. Now, when I rented these lenses, I looked at the weather forecast and it said we were gonna have beautiful blue skies for a couple of weeks. And of course, everything changed like it always happens. And we ended up getting a lot of heavy snow, which kind of destroyed my studio. I was able to recover it and fix it, but yeah, it kind of damaged a lot of things. A lot of trees came down, like this one I'm sitting on. It was very wet and very heavy snow. If you rent a lens and all you have is beautiful blue, sunny skies with perfect light, then you're not giving it a fair chance. You need to use it in every situation so you know if it's something you're gonna like or not. Now, I rented these lenses from two separate companies. I use Borrow Lenses and Lens Rentals. Lens Rentals to me was a little bit better because of their shipping. They sent this in a Pelican case, very protected. Each lens had their own case, and if you want to buy the lenses, you can keep it. So they actually discount some of your rental price towards the price of the lens, so you can save a little bit of money that way. Borrow Lenses, they sent me a box. I mean, it was protected, everything was fine, but the box was, I don't know, it seemed like it had been used 1,000 times. Lens Rental sent me an email, and if anybody is interested in renting any lenses from them, you can save 25 bucks. So I'm gonna be putting a link down below. This is not sponsored. I think they do this to everyone that opens an account, but just so you know, if you wanna save 25 bucks on your next rental, there's a link down below. Now, all these lenses gave me great images, but there's one that stood out. There's one that was much easier to use and gave me the best amount of images compared to those not so good ones. Now, full disclaimer, guys, I am not a bird photographer. That's why I don't have a lens. I do a lot of stock photography. I'm mostly a food photographer, but I enjoy going out in nature. I enjoy taking photos of birds or sports or action shots. I really do like this stuff. But shooting stock photography gives me that ability. I can shoot anything I want and just go out and make the best I can with what I have. That's what stock photography has given me. It's that freedom to go shoot things that I like to do. With that said, these photos are not from a professional bird photographer. This is something I did with rented gear. Like I said, it's not the best of the best. It's the inexpensive lenses. Now, with this experiment, I learned that the Canon 600 and 800 millimeter are not for me. I did manage to get some very good images, but these very limiting lenses, the focus area and the aperture, are for me a big no-no. My favorite lens, despite how heavy it was, is the 60 to 600 Sigma. Out of these four, hands down, that one I got the most amount of consistent good images. I don't know if I said that right, but with the other ones, the spray and pray, I got a good one here, a good one there. With this one, I managed to get more sharp images than not, no matter which camera I used. When I put the teleconverter to 1.4, I did notice a little bit of quality issues, but as with the raw lens at 600 millimeter, it was easier to track the subject, and I managed to get the most amount of photos. It was more consistent, even than the 1 to 500 Pro glass. The Sigma 60 to 600, hands down, it won the battle of the inexpensive telephoto lenses, mostly for Canon. And it's in the middle of the price range. It's under $2,000, which is great. If you've used any of these lenses, let me know what your thoughts are in the comments. I'm gonna post some of these photos on my Instagram and also on Vero. This way you can examine the photos a little bit more in detail and get an idea of how these lenses performed. And with all that talk about birds, I'm gonna fly the drone and close this video with the bird's eye view, because why not? It looks pretty. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, hit that bell, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.